Welcome to the Right Hand Roadmap, the podcast for seconds in command of founder-led companies. I'm your host, Megan Long, owner of Second First. In each episode, we show you the path to success on your journey as the #2 leader in entrepreneurial companies. I am so happy you are here. At our company, Second First, we exclusively work with small entrepreneur-led businesses, so 7 and 8 figures in revenue. And there's some really exciting data I want to share with you guys on what I've noticed among the businesses that are growing on average like 30% year over year. So what I would consider to be high growth businesses, especially in 2026. There's one thing I've identified that the highest growth companies in our world seem to have in common. And I want to be super clear up front. I am not claiming causation here. And I'm not saying this one thing is the reason that these companies are growing, but the correlation, it's really hard to ignore. And it's this one thing: companies that invest in their second in command. So their COO, their integrator, their right-hand operator are growing significantly. And today I want to talk about why I think that's happening. Let me share some actual numbers with you first, because I think they'll land differently once I walk you through my reasoning. In our Second First Mastermind membership, we ask each of our members every single quarter to fill out a quick benchmarking survey. And here's what we found. So last year across all of our cohorts, and cohorts are like, 6 to 10 members each, member companies saw an average revenue growth of 28% year over year. And now I understand that averages or means can be wonky because sometimes there's like a super high growth company that just completely skews the data. So we also look at median, and the median revenue growth of all of our member companies was 10%. So still double-digit revenue growth year over year. Additionally, 25% of our members reported a significant improvement in their strategic alignment with their entrepreneur. Now, again, I'm not sitting here saying that our programs were what caused those numbers, but I am saying that the act of businesses investing in their operators and giving them a peer group, exposing them to new ideas, making them feel less alone in their role, that actually has real business impact. And here's what's so funny. I used to get this so wrong. I used to say, well, this isn't a revenue generating role. And I have actually sat on webinars in front of like 60 entrepreneurs that were looking to grow to that point of hiring an integrator or hiring a second in command. And with conviction, I told them all that this is not revenue generating, that it was a long game, that they would see a long-term ROI in hiring the right person, but not to expect there to be a immediate benefit financially to their business. Don't expect a good integrator or a good COO to immediately grow your top line. And I made the wrong assumption. I got it wrong. So today I want to break down why I think this is true, because I know most of you listening are in this role. So I think it's really impactful to know, even if you don't have a clear KPI or if you don't have a clear metric to measure your own performance in the business, because it's really tricky for your position, to at least know that there is substantial data to back up the fact that, investing in yourself isn't selfish. Investing in yourself is actually a really smart business decision. So the first reason I believe that when an entrepreneur invests in their second in command, it has such a strong ROI is the leadership alignment. When a second in command has a strong peer community, when they're regularly talking to other operators who are navigating the exact same dynamics, the same founder relationships, the same scaling challenges, they come back to work much more aligned. And ironically, being in a room with a bunch of other operators and integrators and COOs, they come back understanding the entrepreneur's perspective better. Things start to feel less personal. They communicate upward more effectively. They stop guessing what their CEO wants, and they start actually knowing based on the conversations they're having with their peers. One of the things we hear most often from our members is that they start to feel more in sync with their founder after joining Second First. And if you've ever experienced the friction that happens when a CEO and a COO are even slightly out of alignment, you know how expensive that is. decisions slow down, teams start getting mixed signals, energy gets spent on your internal tension instead of solving problems in the business. When the two of you are connected and confident in the partnership, that friction starts to go away and it has an actual dollar value behind it. You pick up speed, you pick up traction. The second reason is an exposure of just a better, smarter way of doing things. And this one is my favorite because it shows up in really unexpected ways in our meetings. So here's a real example. We had a member that was on the hot seat in one of our meetings. So basically we had a dedicated hour just to them and their goals, the issues that they were dealing with in the business, and the rest of the group acted as their board of directors. It sounds kind of scary, but folks, once they're on the hot seat and experience it, they're like, oh, that was the most valuable hour I've had all year. And we make sure everyone gives feedback with a lot of compassion and support. Anyway, so one of our members was on the hot seat and he basically went through all of the big rocks or projects that he was hoping to get done this year. And it just came up in almost a throwaway moment that his team was manually entering all of their data in two separate systems because their ERP or their service software wasn't connected to their accounting package. So I just want to repeat that again, because when you say it out loud, it sounds utterly ridiculous. This executive mentioned that his team was hand entering information both into, let's just say, QuickBooks and their service software for every single client, project, interaction, whatever. And during questions, someone in the room, another integrator, operator in a completely different industry, was like, wait, why don't you connect the two of them again? Why aren't they syncing? And it had just never occurred to him. I know it sounds crazy, but not because he wasn't smart. He absolutely is. He's brilliant. But because when you're inside a business, especially when you get promoted like he did, and you inherit systems and processes, sometimes you don't even question the way things have been done. You're just handed it and you're moving at such a speed and you have such bigger issues that it doesn't occur to you, oh, this is absolutely ridiculous and insane and a waste of time. I used to call it being snowblind. So if I was working on a project for way too long and I was stuck in an Excel workbook for way too long, I would actually have someone on my team check me on the project because I had become way too familiar with it. I was snowblind. You normalize the friction and you just build these workarounds into your day-to-day. But when you sit and face a room of let's say 8 other operators from non-competing industries, someone is always going to look at your normal and say, why do you do it that way? Or even better, and this is what we see more often is, hey, I know you're doing it that way. I've found a better way to do it. Can I just share that with you? And that's speed. That's transformation. That's not more information or theory, right? And that's what a great peer group does. It forces you to hold your own operations up to the light and ask, is this actually the best way? And more times often than not, the answer is going to be no. But now you have a room full of people that have lived it to help you find a better way to do it or tell you exactly what they did to solve that same problem. The third reason is confirmation. Being a second in command is a role full of decisions that live in gray areas. You're making judgment calls constantly about people, processes, strategy, and every so often there's no obvious right answer. You just have to make the call and live with it. And when you're doing that alone in a vacuum, self-doubt creeps in. You start second-guessing yourself. You wonder if you're the only one struggling with this particular thing, or if you're maybe just missing something obvious. A high-level peer group gives you something incredibly valuable, and that is confirmation your gut is right. I've watched members bring in their most uncertain decisions into a cohort meeting, whether it's a technology decision, a difficult personnel situation, a strategic disagreement with their founder, and walk out hours later with clarity and confidence because 5 other experienced operators said, yes, we would approach it the same way. Or you're right, that's not normal. You shouldn't ignore it. Annualized employee turnover is one of the metrics that we benchmark. And so basically what your turnover was the last quarter, we run it and see if you kept up that pace, what that would look like annualized. And so a member came in and we laughed about it because it was annualized at over 200%. And there were situations for every single person that had left the company. It was already a small team, but he was like, we're not holding up a mirror to see if it's us. Every exit interview we're having, they're like, no, we love the company. It has nothing to do with you. But he's like, we're the only common denominator here. So I feel like we have to dig into this to make sure it's not something we're doing or something we could be doing to retain this talent. And everyone agreed. They're like, no, your gut's right. Like, even though you're being told one thing, you definitely should probably look into it a little bit more just to make sure there's not something you're missing. So I think that's a great example of, you're right, that's not normal. You shouldn't ignore it. You should trust your gut. Anyway, that confidence has a ripple effect. A second in command who trusts their own judgment moves faster, decides better, leads more effectively, and that shows up in the business. And the fourth reason, you might be surprised, but it's actually reducing the risk of entrepreneur burnout. So here's what I see in the opposite scenario. Here's what I see in businesses without a strong investment in a second in command. The entrepreneur becomes the answer to every single question. Every new idea has to originate from them. There's a lot of things that get escalated upward to the entrepreneur, and that's exhausting. And it has a ceiling. It has a ceiling on growth. It has a ceiling on scale, and it certainly has a ceiling on the founder's well-being. One thing about me, I'm going to wear out Google Scholar. So there was a study I was reading that found the weaker the partnership between a second in command and a founder, the more likely the founder would exit their business early. They would just pull the ripcord and sell. And the stronger the partnership with the second in command, the less likely they were even going to consider selling early. They were going to kind of stick to their original exit plan. So part of that strong partnership is when the operator has a peer group. They come to the entrepreneur differently. Instead of the second in command going to the entrepreneur saying, hey, boss, I don't know what to do about this. What do you suggest? It's, hey, I brought this problem to my peer group. Here are 3 ways that some of my peers have solved this problem. And here's my recommendation based on their experience. And in my experience, founders and entrepreneurs love when they have that second in command, that integrator, that operator that comes to them with ideas. So it feels more collaborative. It feels like they're not the only one charting the course of the business. And I've actually had entrepreneurs tell me, and this makes me so happy, that they've started to say to their COO, hey, I don't know, can you go ask your peer group? Or we have folks popping in our member chat saying, hey, I've been asked to ask you all what you're doing about X, Y, and Z. And then we'll get like 3 different answers, or I'll read it and I'll tag people that I know have the same experience. And it's so cool. Like, that's really huge for a founder to say, hey, go ask your peers. Like, that is a second in command who is resourced. And a resourced operator, as we have now found by the data, is one of the best investments an entrepreneur can make. So like I said up top, I think there's a tendency for high-level executives to feel like it is selfish to take company money to invest in them, because you know everything on your plan that you want to use budget for. You say, well, I should actually invest in professional development for my team instead of myself. And we're finding that that's not true. It's not selfish. Now we know that there is a proven ROI on the growth of your business by investing in yourself. So if you are curious about our Second First membership or our programs, I'll go ahead and put the link in the show notes, or head over to secondfirst.com/membership. But regardless of what that investment in yourself looks like, take this as your sign. You deserve the same investment your CEO gets, and you deserve a room full of people who get it. To find show notes or links to anything mentioned in this episode, visit secondfirst.com/60. Be sure to subscribe to catch future episodes and leave us a review on whatever platform you're listening on. And remember, you don't have to navigate being a second in command alone when you have the right hand roadmap.